Chris, how are you today?
Doing excellent.
You're in beautiful Southern California and you have the audacity to complain that it's too hot over there.
It is too hot today. Yeah, we're in the 90s in October. I think later this week we might end up with a 90-degree Halloween. So, yeah, it's pretty warm.
Well, can't always be perfect, right? Chris, why don't you tell everybody listening a little bit about yourself, what you do, and I kind of want to go back and hear about how you got into this because you have kind of a unique resume. But give us kind of the rundown.
Sure. I would say that at a very high level, I'm a strategist.
Okay.
You can kind of fill in the blanks in terms of what that is. Everything from a customer strategist to an AI strategist to digital strategist, marketing, business, like they all apply. I spend a lot of time helping organizations figure out what do they want to accomplish and how to go about accomplishing it. So a lot of consulting. I do public speaking. I teach at the university level at Southern New Hampshire University. I am a podcast host myself. I'm an author. I've written three books, with my fourth book getting ready to come out at the beginning of 2026. So yeah, I keep myself busy and do a little bit of a lot of different things.
So what would you say occupies the most of your time there?
Yeah, the most amount of time is probably in thought leadership, content writing. Like my book, as an example, took at least a good 9 months to write.
Hmm.
I'm regularly writing out some of these strategies and frameworks that a lot of people start to use. I've got AI frameworks. I've got customer experience frameworks. So yeah, those take some time to kind of theorize and then to implement and then write out so that they can be shared. I just finished writing a an ebook, which is a 10-step strategy for customer success teams to implement artificial intelligence. So that kind of stuff takes a little bit of time. The other things like spending time with clients, public speaking, and going to events, there's some build up to that, but usually it's just a couple of hours worth of work. And, I come on stage, I say some things, and then I leave. So,
Hmm.
yeah, the content piece, I think, I'm also working right now on developing some strategic courses for artificial intelligence. So yeah, a lot of that is probably the bulk amount of the time.
So I heard you talk quite a bit about AI and customer service, and it kind of seems like a lot of what you're doing is like, would you call it customer service, customer success? Various different ways of describing it. Would you say that's kind of the primary thing that you're good at and focus on?
Well, I've been in, we'll call it a customer experience type of role pretty much my entire career. And, bridging the gap between that business side and the technology side is something that I have pretty much always been a part of. And so when I'm thinking about artificial intelligence as today, and everybody wants to talk about it, really the kind of unique way that I present it is a customer centered or customer centric AI. And that tends to get a lot of questions. And, I put that perspective out there as, well, look, why are you using AI to begin with? Usually companies need to solve some sort of problem. They've got a product that they want to share. You've got to go and find the customers. The customers have to be interested in it. And so the basic premise is why are you using AI to solve a problem that your customers don't actually have? Like, start with the problem itself and then work your way inward to figuring out what type of technology you might need to solve that particular problem. And so when you put this customer experience, customer centric perspective on technology, and it doesn't just need to be AI, but just technology broadly, I think it helps really frame what is important. And oftentimes businesses and startups lose focus of what it is. They see the shiny new object, they see the technology, they want to go in and start using it, but they can't really correlate why that matters. And so yeah, a lot of the time that I spend talking with people is on that premise is, well, what does your customers want? And then let's figure it out from there.
Talk to me about how you got started in this customer service, customer facing kind of thing, because it doesn't sound like maybe it's that interesting. It's like customer service to me is like the thing that we have to do, like when there's a problem. But maybe talk me through like where you were that you started into this field and what it means to you.
Well, let's sort of start with that definition. I think, as you said, you hear customer service, and some people might think, well, that's just like a call center. That's like, I have a problem, I need to talk to somebody and get it resolved. But if we start to really break down all of the different components, uh, we've got customer experience, which
Okay.
is the vibe that you're getting when you go and talk with a brand, the overall experience of your time shopping or with that brand. You've got customer success, which is a team that is typically in SaaS-based organizations that is attempting to ensure that you are successful with their product. You have customer support, you have customer service. There's a lot of different themes around customers.
Hmm.
I tend to look at them as all the same.
Okay.
No matter how you want to position that, uh, the the reality is you have a business and you have customers. Like you don't have a business if you don't have customers,
Hmm.
right? So if you know that the most critical component of your business is your customer, then all of the other things that we might talk about, like customer service, customer experience, customer success, customer relationship management, like all of those are what is that ultimately you are responsible for ensuring are working properly. And I kind of started this really. I mean, my first job was working in retail back in the mall,
Hmm.
and you were told like, hey, the customer is always right, and hey, go and talk to the customer, let's make sure that they get their answers. And if you don't have the answer, say, well, hold on, let me go find somebody who can answer this question for you. All those kind of cliche typical things that we think about when related to the customer. And then my next job was working at a movie theater, and I was put in charge of what the customer experience at that theater was going to be about.
Okay.
I started doing some marketing, and I looked at marketing as just another way to communicate stories to the customers to make sure that their experience was good. And then from there, really, it just kind of stuck. It was something that was instinctual within me to look at things differently and to try to, put the technology and the services that we offer from businesses into the eyes of your customer. And a lot of people can't do that, quite honestly, right? They think they can. Think, well, sure, we are focused on the customer. Yes, we want to have a good customer experience. But when you actually start breaking down the different elements and the ways that you think about this, you find very quickly that they have multiple types of policies and procedures that are not focused on the customer. And so I found that there was a really strong opportunity to specialize really in this kind of mindset. My first book was called Customer Transformation, and it was building cultures within organizations that was focused on customers first. My second book was all about the consumer behavior and the impact of that behavior due to artificial intelligence. So, a lot of what I do is focused on building this customer centric perspective, and the technology just so happens that is a wrapper around it. The technology continues to evolve. Right now it's AI. In 2 or 3 more years it's going to be something else. 3, 4, 5 years ago it was mobile devices. Before that it was websites. So having this kind of view that your customer doesn't evolve but your technology and your products do evolve, that's a powerful message once you can get it into the right mindset.
I think you said something really important, and I want to kind of stick on it for a second. You said most businesses have trouble looking at their business from the eyes of the customer. Maybe how do you think about that, and how do you coach people up on that idea?
I have a lot of questions and a lot of materials to kind of demonstrate it. I do workshops, and definitely in the workshops, I'll do something like, here's a scenario, provide me with the answers to the scenario. And then if you have a group of 50 people within an organization and they're all leaders of various departments and you have them, go through this process, what you'll find is that most of them are thinking about things like, my team structure or operational procedures or ensuring that we close a bunch of deals, this month. What's our quarterly report? What's
Hmm.
our churn rate on customers? They associate churn rate as an example with being customer focused. And so if you go through these workshops and you start to identify those areas, it becomes very obvious that, okay, you're not focused on the customer. I've, like, for example, I have a couple of press releases. It's hard to kind of put this in perspective on a podcast, but I'll show press releases from major companies and I'll say, grade this press release and tell me, do you think that it's customer centric or not? And you'll get a lot of opinions like, oh, I don't see anything wrong with this. Or some people will start to recognize the problems within the press release. And, just as an example, there's things like, if I was to give you a list and I was to say, write a statement for your internal teams about the priorities of your organization. And here's a list of words that you can use to create that internal memo, right? In most cases, that type of activity will result in a memo that doesn't even mention the customer
Mm.
because they're focused on whatever is in their organization, whatever their structure, whatever their team is responsible for. And when you point it out, when you show like, well, look, here's a message from Disney. Uh, I've got this, like, there's this article that was, it's a couple of years old now, but it was from Bob Iger and it was Disney. And it was talking about all of the reasons why they have to kind of start thinking about their content differently. And in that entire article, the article is about 1,000 words. The word customer is only appears one time. And it's, again, it just starts to paint the picture that, well, if you really cared about your customers, that would be your priority. Even in the language, even in your memos, even in the way you communicate, how you hire, how you bring people into the organization, your training program, all of these would be placing the customer at the head, the first position of how you communicate. And when you don't do that, it clearly starts to show because then your mindset, the culture within the organization starts to put the customer in lower rankings and other positions. And just going through those exercises, people start to realize, oh, yeah, this is a lot harder and a lot different than we probably thought it was.
Why is putting the customer at such a high priority important? Like, Chris, come on, man. I got
Well,
employees, I got staff, I
oh,
got
we already said it. So,
vendors. I got a lot to worry about, man. Like, I got to worry
okay,
about that
so
customer.
yeah, so you have no customers, then what are you doing with your employees?
Probably terminating them.
You're letting them go. You have no customers, then what does your product matter? Every single thing that you want to say is a priority within your organization does not happen if you do not have customers.
It's all secondary to your
It's
customers.
all secondary. Your customer is your number one priority, period. End of, like, argue with me. Anybody who's listening and who wants to argue this, come to me and tell me what is a higher priority than your customer. And the answer is that whatever you say, I will say, well, you don't have that if you don't have a customer.
Mhm.
That, because you do not have a business. And so you've got to start thinking about this. Like, some people say, well, look, we've got thousands and thousands of customers. We're a big organization. Like, we've got a lot of other things that are more critical. Well, okay. The most recent example is look at Cracker Barrel. Cracker Barrel goes and
Oh
changes their
gosh, yeah.
logo without talking with their customers, and all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose.
Mhm.
And their response was, "Oh, we talked to our customers, and we also talked to a bunch of our employees, and they all thought it was a great idea." Your employees aren't your customers.
Right.
They may be, yes. Your employees are probably having their lunch breaks and eating the food and coming back on their off times and things like that, sure. But they have a bias towards your organization as well.
Mhm.
You know, I sometimes will say, well, okay, what is the percentage that you would feel comfortable with making a change? And so let's use Cracker Barrel again as an example. If you said, okay, let's poll all of our customers, tens of thousands of customers, and give them the choice between two logos, keep our old logo or come up with a new logo. And it was split 50-50. 50% said yes, and 50% said no. What would you do?
I'd probably do nothing. I think it would be cheaper.
You'd probably would do nothing. And then let's start to adjust that. If it was 60-40, would you still do it or not?
Yeah,
You,
you might have to look at the cost there, but it doesn't seem like it's very overwhelming. People want a logo change.
you also potentially lose 40% of your customer
That's
base.
true. Right.
And so if you keep playing this game like maybe 70-30, maybe I'm willing to lose 30%. And even if I figure out that's a fraction of that 30% and the cost benefits of the new logo, maybe I only actually lose 10%. Maybe that's worth it, right? You
Mhm.
get to 80-20, then you're like, okay, now I think we've got a majority that is saying like they would be okay with this change in logo. And then you get to the point where, the concept of a silent minority versus a vocal minority versus silent majority.
Right.
Well, at where does that fit in, right? And so, in a lot of these cases, people are making decisions without actually doing the research, without actually considering what their customers think about it. And that in the nutshell is how customer first thinking works. You've got to go out and explore this. You've got to actually talk to people. If you do it in a vacuum, if you do it just because you feel you want to do it, because you think it's a good idea, I'm the owner, it's my idea, I'm going to run with it. Great. You also run the risk of completely dismantling your business because you didn't talk to somebody. At least at bare minimum, you're doing the research. Uber is another great example. Like everybody says, well, man, Uber came out and they just completely changed the entire industry. Like they just, they did what they wanted to do. Uber spent 2 years market researching what they were going to build before they built it.
Mm.
They knew what the problem was because they had talked to people who expressed that problem. And so Uber was successful because they solved a consumer problem.
Mhm.
They didn't say, hey, this is something that we want to build and we're just going to go out and build it.
Right. It's a solution to a non-existent problem. Right. Hmm. So where do you think like companies have gone awry then? Because this makes a lot of sense. No customers, no money, no staff, no business. Where do you think companies have kind of gone awry with this idea? And is this a new idea that sort of has emerged that the customer is secondary or tertiary?
Number one is ego,
Okay.
plain and simple. I think I know better than you do. And
Okay.
so I'm going to do what I want to do. Ego.
Now,
Second,
now
yeah, go on.
let me push back on that,
Sure.
because I'm sure you've heard this Henry Ford quote where if I would ask my customers what they want, they would have said faster horses, right? Like, does the customer in the market like always know what idea is around the corner? Like, do they know about the idea that they haven't thought through yet? Like AI, right? Like, if you would ask people 5 years ago, like, what do you need to like make your whatever word processing easier? I don't know what they would have said. Maybe a virtual assistant in the Philippines. Like their mind may not have been there yet. How do you think about something like that?
So there's a lot of things to unravel in here. So the first one is the Henry Ford quote. Actually, research has shown that Henry Ford most likely never said that.
Oh,
That
but it
that
sounds so good.
that it is now considered to be a folklore kind of made up thing. There's a lot of historians that have deep dived into that, and they have come to the conclusion that he really never said that.
Okay.
But with that being said, actually, what's interesting is that I would compare it very similar to the Uber thing.
Mhm.
Henry Ford did create faster horses. He
Mhm.
calls it, it's horsepower. That's what actually happened. Now, that's not where the term come from. Henry Ford didn't coin the word horsepower, but he saw that the need for a faster horse in a different format was needed. The problem was not, hey, I need a faster horse. The problem was, how can I go faster?
Mhm.
And Uber was the exact same thing. It appears as if Uber just came up with this new idea to disrupt, but they did the market research. And the problem was, I need a safer and more, easier way to get from point A to B.
Mhm.
And it just so happened to have been something different than cabs. The concept of going from horses to cars, that's not a leap of understanding. And yeah, you could argue that the consumer didn't know, but the consumer's problem didn't change.
Mhm.
I want to go somewhere faster was what was solved.
Got it.
The mechanism by which we do that doesn't matter. So now we fast forward to your question about modern times and, like, WordPress. What is your problem with WordPress? Well, I need answers faster. Microsoft had an AI assistant built into the Microsoft products back in the 1980s
Mm.
called Clippy, which
A little
bounced
paperclip. Yeah.
around
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a paperclip that answered questions for you. There is no difference between Clippy of the 1980s and what you're getting with Copilot today.
Mm.
And
Got it.
so again, what is this? What is the problem? The core problem was, I'm using a tool. I have questions about this tool, and I sort of need help to get me through and how to use it in different ways. Or, how do I tab? How do I create an indentation? How do I create a template? Like, those questions are part of your help solution. And now all you have is some AI assistant that sits there and answers the same questions that they've been answering for decades.
Mm. So
So again, I think a lot of this just has to be perspective of how you are looking at it and get down to that core problem and solve for that.
So you would say the customer will always tell you what they want or the problems that they have. They may just not be able to specifically articulate the solution that they want.
That's right.
And
That's right.
that's what the Henry Ford quote, "Real or not," was kind of getting at, is that the customer didn't understand that there was a possibility beyond a horse, right?
If I asked you, like, in your daily life right now, name 3 or 4 problems that you have that you wish you just didn't have to deal with. Now, you might take a little time to come up with those, but they're there. We do things every day that we're like, I sure wish that I didn't have to get in my car and go get gas.
I was gonna say, I wish I could teleport. That'd be just really nice
Yeah.
if I could just beep, just okay. I'm at the office. Beep. Okay, I'm back home. I'm gonna eat my lunch here. I don't need to see you
Yeah.
guys for the next 45 minutes. I'm gonna eat lunch at home. Okay.
Now we think about teleportation and we get that primarily from the movies, right? Like, Star Trek. Hey,
Hmm.
they can teleport around. That's cool. I wish I could do that. But what is that problem that you're trying to solve? The problem is like, I wish I was in 2 places at once, right? I wish that I could be somewhere one moment and, back home the next moment. You could loosely argue that we are sitting here on Squadcast recording a podcast, and we are miles, thousands of miles apart, and
Hmm.
yet we feel like we're in the same room. So, I could argue that the advent of online, meeting services, was a solution to the problem of teleportation, that we ideally would like to be in person doing it. But, we'll take video and audio as a secondary solution for now.
Hmm. I'd pay more than 39.99 a month for teleportation,
Yeah.
though. So, okay, so I cut you off. You said the first and initial reason why companies have lost this customer first idea is ego. That a founder out
Yep.
there is like, I know what the future holds. I'm going to take us into that idea.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
are
ego is
there a lot of historical examples that you've kind of read through and seen of that exact thing? I mean, of course, the Cracker Barrel one being very
yeah,
recent.
Cracker Barrel is all based on ego. It was an ego-based decision. I would argue that even like the Budweiser fiasco from a few years ago was, rooted in an ego-based decision,
I'm
not in consumer
sure
base.
if they would
Right.
have pulled their customers, like,
Yeah.
you can argue if that's a good thing or not, but I'm
Yeah.
sure if
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
pulled their customers, they would have been like, "No, we
Yeah.
don't wanna do that."
That's exactly it. Like, remove the politics from the conversation. You boil it back down to a business decision. Who decided to do it? That was driven by an ego based decision,
Mhm.
not polling customers to determine if this is what they wanted or not. The secondary part of this is financial.
Okay.
It's really all about money.
Cost of
And
surveying customers, cost of talking to customers?
if they feel that they can get money out of customers by doing something like increasing the costs, probably the
Mm,
best examples right now are things like, Taco Bell. Lots of fast food restaurants right now are doing kiosk based checkouts. So you walk into like a Taco Bell, there's a kiosk there. No one is taking your order at at the cashier. You have to self serve yourself. And in the process, they have reduced the amount of employees that they have working at any one given shift,
mm,
and they've increased the prices of their product. And
mm,
so I'm sitting here thinking, well, wait a second. I'm now doing the work. You have less people and you're increasing the rates. Like something is off. Well, why? Well, because they're trying to boost their profits.
mm,
They're not, that is not a customer faced decision. A customer faced decision would be, well, wait a second. Provide them with an option, like you can order at the kiosk, but you could still come up to the cashier and order if you need to. Customer face would be like, we are reducing our operational costs by providing this new technology. And as a service back to you, we're going to also decrease the cost of the food to make
mhm,
it more affordable for you to come in and enjoy yourselves. McDonald's got into a huge PR battle because of that exact purpose. They are raising their prices, and they've recently come out and said, got it. We hear you. We are going to start creating more value menus. We are going to get our prices back to what the expectations are. And they have kind of shifted that mindset because they recognize that their primary clientele, who is looking for an affordable cheeseburger, is not able to afford it anymore.
mhm.
And so that's because they're pushing that boundary of, well, if we just pay a couple more cents, out there on the burger, people are just going to buy it.
So do you think that's just a short-term mindset that these companies are enacting where it's like, "We can make a little bit more in 2025, even if it means our customers will be a little bit more frustrated and eventually they might just bail out and go to a different place."
Well, let's look at somebody like Disney. So Disneyland in California here, as well as Disney World in Florida, once again, they've raised the prices of their tickets.
Oh, the
Now
prices
you
are
could
crazy. They're like
their prices
100
are
100
already crazy.
they're like
And
150
yet,
bucks a day or something
yeah.
like that?
So now let's put this in perspective. You are increasing, and they're doing this exponentially every year. So every year around October, before you get to the holiday season in December, when people are buying gifts or coming for, the Christmas vibe at Disneyland, every October for the last 4 years, they've increased the prices. And here's really the core of the problem is that during the year, so let's just say, and I can't remember the exact count, but let's just say they have 20 rides at Disneyland. Roughly half of them are down for refurbishing. And they have this perpetual motion where, as long as we have at least 50 to 75% of our rides open, then we can argue that, well, we're just continuing to make the experience better. Yet you're increasing the prices for an incomplete experience at the park.
Mm.
And so you're paying more and getting less. And this is a common trend right now at Disney.
119 to 209 is what, it tells me the price
There
per
you go.
day is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually funny you say that. I was just with my cousin, and they live in Orlando, and they went to Disney World. They got, I can't remember. They got tickets. Something happened. Son got A's on his report card or whatever. I don't remember exactly. And they just picked a random day and went. And they got there at like 4 o'clock, and then at 6 o'clock, they're like, "Hey, we're closing the park for a private event." And he was like, this didn't say this anywhere on the website or anything. And they were like, "Oh, well, sorry." But he's like, "These tickets are expensive. Like,
Yeah. For the full day.
I would have picked another day to come if I knew
Yeah.
that they were closing the park." And he's
Yeah.
like, "I almost got arrested. I was so mad."
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
would have went and complained to the manager and said, I got a half a day. You give me a half of a refund back.
That's what he did, and they were like, I'm sorry. There's nothing we could do." So he said he
Yeah.
wrote a letter to one of the board of directors, which
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even know how you found that person, but then they like signed a Mandalorian helmet or something and sent him a. So they did make it sort of right, but it's like what you're saying. The people on the ground, it's like how much authority and autonomy do they even really have?
Yeah. And when you make decisions that are rooted in money, then you are not making decisions rooted in the customer experience. And Disney is a prime example of how far they have fallen from a customer centric view. Definitely back with Walt Disney and surely in the 80s and 90s. But in the last 20 years, they have moved from caring about the customer to caring more about the money.
Do you think that that's like something that happens as a company gets to a certain size and scale and scope, or maybe if the charismatic founder like Walt Disney passes on and he's gone, like, do you think that person was someone that sort of held it together? Because I'm thinking through examples in my head of like Disney, and there's a good story about Sam Walton when Sam Walton was growing Walmart. Like one of the executives' daughters bought something from Walmart and tried to return it, and they told her like, "No, you can't return it." And it was always a policy at Walmart like you can return things anytime. So she calls her dad, and dad just so happens to be sitting right next to Sam Walton. And Sam's like, "Put her on the phone. I want to hear this." And like she gets on the phone, and he's like, "Give me the manager of the store right now." So gets on with the store manager. He's like, return it. But kind of heard her story, and she was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to like bring Sam into this." And he's like, "No, thank you. Like, I want to hear these stories."
Yeah.
And then at like his next company wide event, they went through that story, not to like shame the manager, but just like, "Hey, this is what happened, and this is not how we want to manage this situation as a company." But that's
Yeah.
a great leader. Not every company has someone like that.
Yeah. So the owner of Costco, as another example, similar to you. So Costco, if anybody has ever been to one, they've got a food court, usually inside outside. They have hot dogs. The hot dogs are $1.99, and people flood to go get these hot dogs for $1.99. The board of directors and various other members and investors for years and years and years have said we are losing money on the hot dogs. We need to increase the cost. And the owner keeps saying, no, we will always keep those at $1.99. And I don't care if I lose money on it. And there is an example of a customer faced, focused position. But yeah, over time, new leadership comes in, somebody else is in charge, ego takes over, financial considerations, put aside, and unless you have it somewhere in a contract that says, no matter what happens for the rest of existence, that this company is in power, we will never change it. And to do so is a violation against company policy. Like, unless you put it in stone, somebody at some point in time will get their way and make that change.
Yeah, the story goes that Costco founder told the new CEO, "If you raise the effing price of the hot dog, I will kill you." Right? So that's the
Yeah.
story. I mean, that's a guy with conviction. Like
Yeah.
he got it. Like, dude, I started a $5 billion organization. Like, I kind of have like a deeper understanding of this than you. But
Yeah.
again, that ego thing, like that can cut in both directions.
That's right. And most people don't have that passion to say, I don't care if we're losing money as long as our customers are happy.
Hmm.
And they're not losing money. They're losing money on a hot dog.
Right.
But in the master scheme of things, they're making billions of dollars and they can sacrifice a hot dog here and there.
Well, right. That comes back to kind of what I said is the short term profit motive versus the long term growth idea, and that was why Charlie Munger was so excited about Costco, and he would talk about it at no end. He's like, because they have a great long term vision for growth of the
Yeah.
company, not
Yeah.
like Walmart. We're going to make a lot of profit this year, but
Yeah.
like maybe we aren't actually doing a lot to retain these customers and give them an exciting experience.
Yeah. Home Depot is another one because when Home Depot was, originally founded, they had extremely strong ties to local communities and their customer base. And then, leadership and management has changed, but they have mostly been able to sustain that original vision and be able to support it. There's been a few times where they've questioned sort of what their future holds, but when you get founded with strong moral alignment, sometimes it's also easier to withstand that change of time. But you also have to make sure that you're bringing people in that still believe in it.
Do you think it's also like part of the private equityization of
Oh yeah.
America? Is that something that you're feeling in this particular scene?
Yeah. Yeah, so when I think about, like, you care more about financial alignment than the customer, a lot of that, especially like at Disney, a lot of that is driven by shareholders that that have stake in the company, and all they really want is their own pockets, filled.
Mhm,
So the financial part of it could be the CEO, the direct leadership of that company that is making decisions for financial gain. But a lot of times, especially in the larger enterprises, you do have shareholders who are kind of fueling that fire.
yeah, that's also been our experience too when we have clients or customers that they have private equity come in. It just sure seems like everyone says like private equity's here, they're gutting it, they're going to get rid of 60% of the workforce. I don't know how those 40% that remain like operate, but there's a lot of turnover, like instantly staff's totally turning over. People are like, this sucks. This isn't what it used to be. Care of quality of the product diminishes. And people just kind of have like, hey, we're going to hold this asset for like 3 years. Like we don't, like if we churn a customer or two out, like we're not that worried
Yeah.
about that. Like we got to put fuel on the fire of the marketing. We got to lower our expenses. We got to get this thing to $150 million in profit, and then we're out. Like,
Yeah.
and I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah. One of my first startups got acquired. And in that acquisition, they pretty much said, all we care about is your technology. We will keep the people on for an additional year, but at the end of that year, everybody's going to be let go. And all we're going to do over the course of this year is ensure that the technology gets transformed into our existing products. And that's exactly what happens. They did not really care about anything other than the technology itself, and they had a plan for it. I mean, you could argue that it was nice enough that they kept people on for a year, but there was a deeper motive to them for acquiring the company.
Did you have any concerns with like going along with that deal?
No, because I think we all are faced with these moments in life, right? Like, I was working with another startup more recently, and they had an investor come in and say, "Hey, we are interested in investing for your A round, and here's how much we would be willing to invest." And the CEO basically said, "No, that's not enough." Well, fast forward a year, and now the CEO can't find another investor anywhere,
Hmm.
and most likely that business is going to fold. And so you end up with like a reflection. "Eh, maybe I should have taken the initial investment." you
Mhm.
know those are the paths that we have to figure out in business. And sometimes, if if I had a company and somebody came along today and said, "Hey, I'd give you 5 million for that company," I might say yes, because it's be like, well, I'd rather get that 5 million today and go off and start something else than, risk the future, which is an unknown future where the company could fold and I get nothing.
Mhm.
For each of us, that's going to be a different decision.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, it's I don't know if it's sad or I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but one thing that I sense is that there are very few people out there who wanna start a company and manage it for, like, the next 60 or 70 years and be like, "This is gonna be, you know, the Johnson family company, and we're gonna hold it for 100 years and become Rothschilds or become Waltons or become," insert the Hiltons here. Um, and I guess I do think that shortens the time horizon for people, and it increases the expectation of like, I'm going to exit and I'm going to make my 20 million and that's going to be it. And then I don't know what I'm going to do after that. I'm going to go invest, I guess. But because of that, yeah, they do more of these things that we've discussed where it's like short-term financial incentive, go, 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 sell it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I think to each, person, you're going to have your own. Like, if you had a company and you were generating $1 million a year in that company and you were perfectly content, and somebody came along and said, I'll buy your company for you, there's a good number of people who would sit there and say, no, I'm perfectly comfortable and fine. There's a bunch of people who would sit there and say, yeah, I want to get out of it. There are people who start businesses and actually think that they are going to be lifelong brands that are going to grow and that they're going to retire with those brands. And I can tell you right now, year after year, that decision changes.
Hmm.
I've got a good friend who I started a company with. He is still in business. I'm no longer part of that business. He's been going on that business now for 11 years, and he has no desire to sell the business or to have somebody acquire it. But I tell you what, in another 5 years, he may have a different perspective on
Hmm.
that. He may say, "Well, wait a second. 50 million for my company? Hmm, yeah, okay. Now I'm listening."
Are there any companies out there that you can readily say they're doing a great job with this customer centric focus?
Yeah, I mean, there are companies out there. I mean, look, Chick-fil-A. Going back to fast food, In and Out. Which is primarily on the West Coast, but is starting to migrate over to the East Coast. They are founded in customer first perspectives,
Hmm.
and they do things specifically for the customer. Uh, Chick uh, Chick-fil-A is notorious for their training programs and teaching employees how to treat customers. Uh, In-N-Out Burgers continuously keeps their burger prices relatively cheap, in comparison. I can go to In-N-Out and spend about $6 for a burger, fries, and a drink. I go to Wendy's and for the exact same burger, fries, and drink, and I'm paying $15. So those kind of decisions of quality and control and care, that has to be rooted in your leadership and how you come to the market. But yeah, unfortunately, I would say that there's more companies out there that quite honestly don't care about their customers as long as they're getting paid, and finding really strong examples of customer centric organizations is definitely harder.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought was Amazon. I know that's like maybe a controversial one because that's like such a big company. It's hard to like only and exclusively think of the good because I know there's workers peeing in bottles while they're driving and all that stuff. But I do get the sense that Amazon does legitimately care about moving kind of life and technology forward for the customer. Like they're putting their money where their mouth is too with like the new shipping methods. And because I work in Amazon, so I've seen it at least over the last decade. Like used to be that they would just deliver with all the traditional services, your FedEx and UPS and USPS. Then they were like, huh, well, I'm sure there's a profit motive too, but we can actually get these products to the customers a lot faster if we just deliver them ourselves. And then, oh, we can actually get them even faster if we have like a hub in basically every city. And now they're working on these drones, and I've been through their facilities, and it does seem clear to me that they are thoughtful about how they could get products to the customer faster, keep prices relatively low. And that's tough in this kind of world and cost and investment. But I get the sense that they're at least still serious about that.
Yeah, I think that's another example of how leadership has kind of changed the company slightly. So, Jeff
Definitely. I would
Bezos, when
say
he founded the company, was definitely customer centric. Famous examples were, he was one to say, "We're going to bring an empty chair into every single meeting, and that empty chair represents the customer. And you are going to be challenged. Would you have this conversation in front of a customer?"
mm,
Right. So things like, I think we should raise the prices and I don't really care what the customer says, which is happening in a lot of boardrooms. Would you say that if a customer was sitting right there?
mm,
And so he famously was all about ensuring that that perspective was present in every single avenue meeting that they were attending. Even things like he had an API mandate, which was designed to empower technologists to build more customer centric types of platforms. Those all of these types of mandates and formulations that he had were customer centric. And then, of course, he basically left. New CEO comes in. New CEO has a different philosophy, wants to run things a little differently. That's not to say that some of the root, mantras are not still present, but they have started to move slightly more. Like if we would say that Jeff Bezos was 100% customer focused, now they're probably at like a 90, 80%, right? So they have shifted a little bit. But yeah, I would agree. They tend to want to deliver quality services and make options available. That's why they have a marketplace that you can participate in. That's why you can self publish books on their platform. A lot of these things are for the regular people out there to be able to have a means by which they can produce something. I'll tell you another quick story. I was doing some work. I spent 5 years at Google myself, but when I left Google, I was working on a project and I was an ex Google employee and I had Google contacts, but I had pitched this particular project to both an Amazon team and a Google team. And I got far better support in that process from the Amazon team than I ever remotely got from the Google team, even when I knew the people and I was an ex employee. So
mm,
that gives you some indication as to what they try to go through to support people.
interesting. Okay, kind of shifting topics because I know AI is something that you've done a ton of work in. I believe I read that you're a professor of AI ethics. Is that correct?
Yeah, I teach at Southern New Hampshire University. I teach several courses. One of them is ethics and privacy around AI. One of them is business systems. One of them is customer centric design practices. So, yeah, a lot of what we're talking about, I also teach at Southern New Hampshire.
So, talk to me about how you first got into that because you're doing this customer service, customer experience thing. Where does AI come into play?
AI is just another tool. I hate to kind of simplify it. AI is a technology that enables us to build better experiences. I think the challenge for a lot of organizations is to put all of this in perspective. So, AI broadly has been around for 50, 60 plus years.
Okay.
It's not a new technology. And I would even argue that a lot of what we use today with ChatGPT, Claude, et cetera, is not revolutionarily different than what it was, say, 20, 30 years ago. It has enhanced in terms of the processing speeds, the amount of data, the accuracy has improved a little bit. But the foundational technology is pretty much all the same, transformer based services that generate content, right? What has really changed is our access to this technology. So,
Okay.
OpenAI, ChatGPT creates an interface that is now in the palm of our hands, and I can log in and I can ask AI a question and I can get a response.
Mm,
That type of access to the technology has completely changed our perspectives on what that technology can do. The problem is that everybody is trying to find solutions leveraging like ChatGPT, which is a large language model. And what, let's say I have a problem and I'm trying to solve, in most cases, the large language model is probably not the right tool to solve the problem that you are trying to solve.
okay.
So, let's just say I want to do a data analysis on my customers and provide insights in terms of renewal rates or something like that.
All right.
I could potentially get that information from ChatGPT, but it's probably not going to be accurate. There's other business intelligence types of platforms out there. Like you use Amazon. Amazon has analytics. All of that analytics is being generated by, usage patterns for your customers with some AI insights to generate reports. None of that is actually being done by an LLM.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is part of the challenge, is to kind of say, well, wait a second, go back to what is the problem you're trying to solve. Great. You want to get better data analytics of who's buying your products. Now let's figure out what tools that are available that can help us come up with that data. And maybe it's an LLM. Maybe it's an analytics based tool that has some AI built into it. Maybe it's, some sort of chat bot. Maybe it's, it could be any number of things.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're focused more on, well, let's go and use ChatGPT and let's build something for our customers. Well, okay, what are we going to do? Now you've just built something and you don't even know if your customers want it or not.
Mm. So still back to that idea that you got to find out what the customer actually wants.
Yep.
So not to go back to customers, but maybe just talk to me about how do you think about talking to your customers? Like, is there a method you have for surveying? Can this be quick and informal? Nike's not probably doing that many informal surveys with their customers. It's probably much larger focus groups. Like, maybe just talk me through, like, okay, I've got an idea at my business, whatever. I want to launch a software that, gives my customers real-time reporting. It's going to be expensive, but I think it's a good idea. It sounds like a good idea, right? How would I go about then actually surveying those customers, finding out what they think?
Yeah. It's funny because I get asked this question a lot, and they said, they they say it just as you kind of said it, which is, how do I go about talking to my customers? Uh, Talk to your customers. Like, that's what you answered it.
Like, don't overthink
Get
it.
get a phone out and call somebody up and talk to them.
Hmm.
I've often argued, like, when's the last time do you think that the CEO of American Airlines flew coach and sat next to a customer and talked to them on the flight? Like, never. It just hasn't happened.
Probably.
You know, but there. If you've ever watched that show Undercover Boss,
I
like,
have I've not watched it, but I know exactly what you're
yeah,
talking about.
I've often thought we need to have an undercover boss where it's not necessarily them going in and pulling their employees, but going and actually sitting down and talking with customers. And really, like, there are some CEOs out there. I can't come up with the names off the top, but I've heard the stories before where, they'll go into a grocery store and they'll walk up and down the aisles and they will actually talk to people and figure out what they're thinking and why are they there for the day, and are they finding things. And I think this process of, like, actually getting into it and going to a location and talking to people, or getting on the phone and talking to people, getting people into a room or onto a webcam and talking to people as a group, a voice of the customer types of programs. Yes, you can still send out a survey. Domino's Pizza sends out surveys pretty much after every order. There was
Mm.
a period in time where Domino's Pizza was saying, if you fill out this form, I will give you a free pizza. And so you filled out the form, you got your free medium pizza. And after you ordered your free medium pizza, you got another form to say, fill out this form and get a free pizza. I lived off of Domino's Pizza for a month because every time I ordered a free pizza, I got another survey to get another free pizza. Do you
Huh.
think they got a bunch of feedback in that? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, go and do your surveys. Yeah, go and embed things in your platform or in your service. If you've got some sort of software, you've seen the pop-up boxes that come and say,
Hmm.
hey, do you have a couple of minutes just to share your thoughts? But you can do it deeper in that. Like, answer this one question before you unlock the next feature. Like, does this make sense to you? So surveys and forums, calling people, focus groups, social media. The beauty with AI now is that you can leverage an AI tool to go out and scan social media and the internet and find sentiment analysis of what people are actually talking about. What
Hmm.
are they saying about you?
Hmm.
Let's look at all of that and organize it in some way to see if we can get some other insights about, how we're doing. So scan the internet, use AI to do that, use your focus groups, call people, go in person. Like all of the above are valid ways to get that feedback.
So don't overthink it. Just get out there, start asking the questions. Now, I guess maybe this is a more specific question, but when you're in those rooms and you're talking to customers and you're hearing their feedback, are there particular things you're listening for? Are there particular questions you want to ask that you think are valuable to unlock ideas? Like, and what's the difference between a customer giving you reasonable feedback and just kind of generally complaining?
Complaining is good. Complaining is valid feedback. Like, you can position this in several different ways. For example, you could have a customer focus group that is nothing but people who have complained. Like, hey, we've got 10 people in the room. They've all complained about something. Let's actually hear them complain in person and get a better idea of what they're complaining about. Like, I would do it. Another way you could do it is just kind of be generic and say, hey, we just want to kind of get a feel for how you use the product, why you use the product, when you use the product, like all of those rationales. You could also say, hey, we want to get some people in here who are thinking about the future. Like, if you had this feature, would you use it?
Hmm.
What feature would you really like to see? You want teleportation? Well, we can't do that yet, but we'll write it down like that's a good idea. So, those types of forward focused motions are also acceptable. Past, present, and future type of analysis, and then break it down with different types of open ended questions, true or false questions, scales of 1 to 5, all the typical things that you would get. But the beauty of having them in person is that you can then deep dive. Let's dive into that a little bit more. You said that you would never use this product on a Sunday. Why? Like, help me understand that. That doesn't make
Hmm.
sense to me. Can you explain it?
Mm. So it sounds like if you can connect with small groups of like if you don't have millions of customers, connect as closely as you can. If you have millions of customers, maybe surveys are going to give you good data that's sufficient and actually can be statistically valuable.
I mean, if we go back to that percentage 50-50, like if I have a million customers and I want to try to get an idea if I should change my logo, I'm not going to poll 100,000 customers because that's not going to tell me enough.
Mm,
You're right. Even if I pull 100,000 customers and I get 100% accuracy, that's still only 10% of my overall, population.
mm,
So you've got to start thinking, I'll always say if you are a smaller company and you only have, say, a couple of hundred customers, there is no reason why you don't pick up the phone and talk to every single one of them. And any CEO that's out there that says, well, I just don't have the time for that, that's an excuse. It's an
mm,
excuse that demonstrates that you really don't care about your customers. So if you have 100 customers and you're the CEO, get on the phone and call them and talk to them and just say, hey, I'm the CEO and I was just kind of curious, did you enjoy your experience? Did you, did your product arrive okay? Excuses of, well, I just couldn't, I don't have the time to talk to them. That's, that's damaging.
mm,
As you get larger and you do get to, a million customers, if that's the number, well, then, yeah, maybe you don't have time. But I'll tell you what, the CEO probably still has time to call 10 customers randomly
mhm,
and get an idea of what they are thinking about, how they're using the service,
mhm,
go and sit in meetings, go, in person and walk up and down aisles, whatever that is. If you have to pull, the rest of them in some way, then go and pull them. If you can bring them in as different types of focus groups, then do that. But again, there's your problem is figuring out what is acceptable percentages that if I only pull a fraction of these people and they like it or they don't like it, is that enough for me to make a decision that's going to impact them? And every company is going to have to make that decision.
mm. Kind of sounds like it goes back to that prioritization. If you prioritize this, then you'll find time to do it, and you won't be the
That's right.
CEO that says, "Oh, I don't have time to talk to my customers."
if you were in a relationship, or you're dating somebody, and you say, oh, I'm sorry, I got home and I didn't have time to text you goodnight, or that I made it home safe or anything, that tells me that your priority is something other than the relationship, which is why most relationships break up, because it's like, well, you didn't have time for me. you
Hmm.
know it is the same principles here.
Hmm. Okay, Chris, you coach businesses up on how to utilize AI and adopt AI in their business. I think this is something that I talk to a lot of people, and they'll be like, "Are you using AI in your business?" And my answer is not that much yet. So I'd be interested in hearing how you're seeing other people use AI, how you coach businesses up to use AI, and then maybe potentially what is just like the kickoff point for this thing?
It goes back to what we said. Tell me what problem you're trying to solve. I'll give you an example. You hold on to your, like, if you have a problem to solve, like, hold on to that. I'll just give you an example. So I have a couple of people who have come to me and said, I would like to have on our website an AI agent
Hmm.
that answers questions. And customer comes in and they ask a question, and the AI agent returns the response.
Okay. Yep.
And my recommendation is, so you want to build a search engine? They're like, no, we want it to be an AI agent. Well, wait a second. Let me figure this out. What you're saying is you want the customer to come in, ask a question, and then you want to provide an answer back to them. Yeah. Said that's a search engine.
Hmm.
Tell me the difference between a search engine and your AI agent. Well, the AI agent is going to be more interactive. Are you going to monitor what it says? Well, yeah, need to make sure that it says, what we want it to say, and it doesn't have, hallucinations, and it doesn't say things that could get us in trouble.
Hmm.
Okay, great. Well, a search engine is going to provide you with that exact same functionality for a lot cheaper and a lot easier to control and a lot more accurate in terms of its responses. No, I want an AI agent. Okay, I'll charge you $200,000 to build you an AI agent that does exactly that.
Hmm.
Like, or you could go and download this tool for free and you have the exact same functionality. You
Hmm.
you choose, right? And this type of framing of what is the problem, what are you trying to solve, and then what is the technology that we can use to solve that problem. I mean, I don't think a lot of people can argue it, except for the people who just want to use AI for the sake of using AI.
Hmm.
And so if you start there, well, then you run into all these other types of challenges, like what type of AI and what is it going to be doing? And you just said that you want to make sure that it's accurate and you want to control what it says. And every time you put yeah, but I want to do this and this, that increases the cost of it as well. There's nothing that says you can't use AI, but it goes back to, let's figure out why you want to use AI and
Hmm.
what's that problem. And then we can find a way to actually do it that makes sense.
Hmm. Okay, so it starts with the problem. Instead of saying AI is my solution, it starts with a specific problem within the company. Um,
Yeah.
and I guess my mind goes to, well, we have a lot of challenges, but I don't know where to begin to think about tech as a solution for some of these challenges. Like, which ones are good candidates for tech being a solution versus, like, yeah, that's just that's a problem everybody has. Employees having issues in our warehouse team. That's a pretty
Yeah.
common challenge. I think that probably is true at a lot of businesses. Is AI appropriate for this? My sense says probably no, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, look, here is one way that you can leverage AI to support that. Like,
Okay.
you can take that problem. You know, I, I've got employees in the warehouse. Uh, Scheduling sometimes is a little weird. Uh, Communication for them checking in with what they've been working on sometimes gets lost. Idle time is a big question for me. Those types of elements. You could go into ChatGPT or Claude, one of these AI tools, and you could position that scenario. Here is my problem. provide me with a couple of ways that we potentially could solve this problem. Have some of those ways be process improvements or operational, business operational improvements, and provide some of these as technology solutions that could help us solve these problems. And ChatGPT is going to come back with a strategy and provide you with, say, a list of 15 answers, some technology based, some operational based. And then you could go through those and say, oh, we've tried that already. That didn't work. We've tried that. Oh, this is an interesting idea. This says that maybe our mobile phones could have some sort of GPS tracker with time encoding in it that, every time they get to a point, it automatically asks them to verify that it's been complete. Like that could be automation and that could be a part of the application in some way.
Hmm.
Do we then need AI? And you can deep dive with ChatGPT then on this. I really like your idea for item number 7. And can you further explain that? Like, what does this entail? How would we build this? What type of technology is required to make this work? And then you can just continue to have that kind of consultative based conversation with AI to get those solutions implemented. But again, the starting point is your first question is, here's the problem I'm trying to solve. Help me solve that problem.
So have you basically made these large language models like your first like search engine when you have a problem? Are you starting just like, I want to write a book, talk to me about how to begin this process? Is that what your process has become for just like, problem and let's see what ChatGPT or similar has for me?
Yeah, so the large language models do an excellent job as acting as kind of a collaborator or a brainstorm session.
Okay.
So, like we were just talking about, even in book writing, hey, I need 10 fictional characters for a make believe world on an alien planet that is surrounded by a sun that is blue, right? Whatever, and ChatGPT is going to come up with a bunch of stuff for you, and you can look
Hmm.
at it and you can decide, this resonates with me or it doesn't resonate with me. So for collaboration, brainstorming, idea generation, these tools are excellent at that, and they can be very helpful. And so even if you're a business and you're thinking about like, hey, I'm really struggling with marketing my brands, my products,
Hmm.
and especially if you're on Amazon and you're like, I'm really struggling with marketing my products on Amazon platform, marketplace. What should I do? It's going to come up with a marketing strategy for you.
Hmm.
You could then add into that, here's my niche, and here's the categories that I'm in. And I'm looking for potential competitors who are in this space and how are they managing it? And could we look at the internet more broadly and see, do my competitors have websites that are connected then into Amazon in some way? How are they facilitating that? What do you think their marketing strategy is? And it's going to go and it's going to evaluate this information and again provide you with a strategy. You can add any number of different types of ways you want to present that. Hey, provide me with a marketing strategy for this particular type of product within this niche on the Amazon platform, and provide it to me in a weekly strategy where every Tuesday I am writing some sort of article and Wednesday I'm doing an advertising.
Hmm.
Give me the next 30 days. What should I do every day for the next 30 days to get my product noticed?
Hmm.
And it's going to provide you with these answers. So, don't always think that, hey, I have to find a way to use AI in my business as a means to like manage people as an example, but maybe I'm going to use AI to stimulate ideas and insights that are going to help me be more productive, and definitely start using ChatGPT and Claude for those types of scenarios.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I probably don't do a good enough job of that. But as you were talking, my buddy just called me yesterday, and he wants to buy a plot of land and build a like a little like a farmer's market or like a small meat market. And the first bank that he went to denied him because he's a farmer, so he shows a loss or whatever. So I was just thinking that's like a perfect prompt that he could throw that into an AI.
That's right.
Here's the situation. Give me like a couple of different alternative funding methods, or tell me some other local banks that
That's
provide
right.
farm lending or construction and farm lending.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, like even if I take that right now, we can kind of do it in real time, although I seem to not be logged in, but let's see if I can get logged in really quickly.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, I'm also interested in hearing your thoughts on other like low hanging fruit that businesses can implement these, whether it be AI or large language model or just technology that maybe people are like a skip behind on, that they aren't using yet, but it's like this is just going to be really helpful for you guys.
Yeah, I think starting with like ChatGPT, or Claude, there, if you are on X, Grok as part of XAI, that's another one that you could use. There's multiple kinds of these, GPTs, large language models that are out there. I would say, look, you can use them for free. You can go and create an account, uh, baseline account, even like ChatGPT baseline account is like $20 a month. So if you're a business and you just kind of want to play with it, just go and start using those. Start asking questions. Ask any type of question about your business and see what it can come back with. Because sometimes it's not about, like, again, trying to figure out how to use that tool directly into your business. It's more about how can the tool help me build and accelerate and grow my business. And if you focus more on that type of approach, I think it's better. Same, just like what we've also been talking about, going back to, hey, I want to start a business. Could you provide me what you think is the customer problem that I want to solve?
Mm.
And you can ask ChatGPT to maintain that customer centric perspective in your analysis to really help you fine tune what problems you're solving and how you might do it.
What's that $20 get me if I subscribe to the Chat GPT premium kind of thing?
Uh, so it's basically just an interface that allows you to go in and ask questions, and it's fairly unlimited. What So there are multiple tiers. There's the kind of the beginning tier and a professional tier. The beginning tier is around $20 a month. The professional tier is around $200 a month. So there's a big jump. But really, you're going to get everything that you need within the $20. And there's the only real big differences are things like how the data gets processed, the amount of memory that it has, the types of personalization. But really, those parts are not really meaningful for anybody who's just starting out.
Okay, because I've used the free version, but I guess I just wasn't sure what that extra $20 a month gets me. And 200, man, that's kind of a lot. That's a day at Disney, so I gotta
Yeah,
save those shekels. Um, were you able to get anything off of that prompt, or are you still working on it?
I'm doing it right now.
All right, cool. And I also want to ask you about this AI ethics thing, because will AI go Terminator on us? That's a whole nother question. But like, will AI turn our world into like a dystopian, like AI run chat bot where we're all dating like, virtual women? I guess that's sort of a different question and and an equally dark outcome potentially.
So let's here's, I basically gave a simple prompt like, give me some ideas of how I can look for funding and some funding and strategies specifically for building a local meat market.
Hmm.
And it came back with a small business loan,
SBA, that's
micro
good.
loans, community banks or credit unions, potentially angel investors, friends and family. Like, a lot of this is pretty traditional in terms of how you would go and get funding for anybody. Crowdfunding, working with a local farmer that might be able to provide land, vendor financing, like some meat suppliers or equipment vendors offer deferred payment programs. So, like, there's a good
Hmm.
example. Like, if we were to deep dive into that, I have meat, I want to sell it, but hey, you've got like a meat grinder and maybe you would be willing to give me the meat grinder, and and we would be your exclusive partner in some way, right? Like
Mm,
some of that you could just continue to play off of once you've got the idea. This also supplied me with key components for a business plan,
mm,
not just like your executive summary, but your business description. And it says, explain what makes your market unique: locally sourced meats, butcher experience, specialty cuts, organic focus, community based models. So
mm,
again, it's giving me enough prompts for me to sit there and think, well, wait a second, there is a restaurant, a deli down the street. What if I could, include them as like kind of, farm to table, but meat to meat to sandwich type of approach in my business plan. And again, all of this is here, and I can deep dive into it and then start to ask more questions and think about it and add that to my plan.
mm. Yeah, I think that's a really good way of thinking about it, and a very simple entry point. So you're not trying to, like you said, code some huge customer service chatbot that's like not really going to save you any money, hardly.
Yep.
Um, what about AI ethics? Are we headed towards a future society we won't love with this, or does that depend on the path that we take, right now?
Yeah, a lot of it depends on the path that we take and any type of regulatory issues that come in to play over the course of the next year or so. But unfortunately, we are on a pretty bad path as of
Okay.
right now. We're
Okay.
not talking about say Terminator, right? We're not talking about Skynet taking over and killing us all.
Good film,
Um,
but hopefully
yeah,
not.
but what we are seeing is that we have problems with language. As people continue to use these types of tools, they're becoming lazier. Critical thinking skills are
Mm,
declining. Right now, it's estimated that 50% of everything on the internet was actually generated by AI.
hmm.
So if you consider that 50% is human written and 50% is AI generating, and that is only increasing drastically, exponentially on a daily basis. What that also means is that as we continue to leverage AI to write for us, that our language all starts to sound the same. Because if everybody's
Mm,
using the same tools, then
right.
everybody ultimately is going to sound the same.
Right.
And then the training of these programs is being done on its own content, which means if I write something with AI and then it goes to try to train on it, it's going to be training on itself,
Hmm.
which we then get into what we call degenerative AI, which
Okay.
means that every version of that training per generation degrades the quality of the output. And so there are a lot of really critical areas of concern for us that we've got to try to figure out how to solve. Otherwise, in the next, we could say in the next 100 years, we could basically be in a very bad place and not realize it, because this isn't like all of a sudden overnight we wake up and it's like, well, wait a second, something bad has happened.
Hmm.
This is a slow burn that will gradually transform how we engage with each other and how we engage with technology. And if we don't recognize that, then in 20 years it starts to change, fundamentally change how we communicate, how we think, and we'll get to a point where everything is different and don't realize how we got there.
Mm,
So
interesting.
yeah, I don't know if you ever watched the movie Idiocracy.
Oh, great film. Yeah.
Yeah, that is actually a reality that is more likely than Terminator.
Okay. It's just that we become so dependent on AI to do everything, to write our messages, to
Yep,
interact with people, that we lose the muscle, which is critical thinking, writing, working hard.
exactly.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I never thought that much about the degenerative AI. So, what would be the worst case scenario with that? Like you said, everything just sounds the same. Like if you're reading an article, you're like, I don't feel like I read anything of substance here.
Yeah. Well, there's this kind of term that I've used before, but called the flattening of language. So
Okay.
if we think about our language currently as expressive,
Hmm.
I say something and I have a certain tone to how I say it, and in my writing I tell stories, and there's a unique approach that's uniquely me in what I'm writing. and you do too. So you and I have, different types of ways that we communicate, and our writing styles are also different. And then again, if you play that out over every single person around the world, you've got all of these different types of layers, but there will be some similarities, regional similarities, sort of like dialects in our language.
Hmm.
People who live in Ohio sound like they live in Ohio versus people in California who sound like they live in California. Not really, but you're getting the point.
Hmm.
Um, well, what happens is that as AI continues to train on other forms of AI, and our writing that is coming from AI, we start to lose that voice. So, where there's typically these peaks and valleys of original voice, all of that starts to flatten, and we all then start to sound monotone.
Oh.
And we will get to a point where if everything, so even if you look at like writing throughout history, um, Shakespeare wrote differently than like Mary Shelley's and Frankenstein.
Hmm.
And yet now imagine that every book that comes out from here on out doesn't sound like Shakespeare or Mary Shelley's, but it sounds like AI.
Mm.
And every single book that you read has no emotional context, has no kind of uniqueness to it. It all basically sounds the same. That's what's happening. Whether or not we see it right now broadly, a lot of people will argue, well, wait a second, I still have my unique voice and what I write is all still uniquely me. But if we got 50% of the internet, which is generated by AI, at least 50% of the internet has a tendency to sound the same,
Hmm.
because that's how the output works. The output is not going to write things uniquely in your view. You can ask AI, you can ask ChatGPT, like, write me a business strategy in the voice of William Shakespeare,
Hmm.
and it will do it.
Hmm.
But as we continue to grow this medium, we continue to actually flatten our languages, in which case we will end up in a point where everybody basically sounds the same.
And it is the basic reason for that because let's say it was started with these large language models training on 100% books and texts that were written by
Original
humans,
content.
and then they used that and they created some content, and that maybe became 10%. They're
That's right.
doing 10%, 90%, but it's just so easy for them to create new content. Then it became a 1-to-1 ratio, and then it
That's right.
5-to-1, and a 10-to-1, and then 100-to-1. So
That's
then
right.
before you know it, you don't read anything that sounds like Ernest Hemingway at all. It just sounds like generic large language model.
That's exactly it.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, to me, it sounds like it's a superpower to still be able to write. Like I like to write. I think it's interesting. I think it's fun. I think I'm, decent at it. Um, so I kind of envision a future where nobody knows how to write any longer, and I'm, like I have a superpower that nobody else has now.
I mean, that's part of the problem as well. Is if we forget how to critically think, if we forget how to, I mean, heck, even our reading is declining because no one's really reading. I'd
Yeah.
rather watch a video. I'd rather
Yeah.
listen. I'd rather try to interpret that. People are reading headlines and not actually reading the full article. We are hypersensitive to we've got short attention spans. And so when reading and writing and communication skills and language all start to decline, which they are, then you again run into a problem. And
Mm.
I think of it in this context. If we lose 1% of that each year over the course of 100 years, it's gone.
Mm.
And
Right.
1% is not noticeable. 1% decline each year for the next 10 years, a 10% loss is not noticeable unless we are testing for it and watching it and trying to regulate against it.
Mm.
And that's the real problem. That's the real challenge for us, is that, we, instead of a 1% loss in critical thinking skills per year, we got to, I mean, I would argue that it's not even acceptable to be at a 0.01% loss per year. We've got to figure out how we can improve our critical thinking and everything else, leveraging these tools.
Mm, interesting. So is that your great fear with AI right now? Is that your primary fear? Do you have second and tertiary fears?
Yeah, no, the my biggest fear is that you know, our ability to be human is being erased. That's the fear. Not that AI is going to take over humanity. It's that it's going to slowly corrupt humanity to a point that we are no longer recognizable. Like that's generally the biggest concern. There are other areas of concern, like the addiction levels of these systems is immense right now.
Mhm.
We are seeing, levels of similar to drug addiction and cigarette use,
Mm,
that I started arguing like maybe these tools need some sort of warning, that they are addictive in nature, and they are being designed to be addictive because that generates profit.
mm,
Right, the more you use it, the more you want to use it, the more money they make, and so that's a clear challenge for us. The ethical and other concerns, when people start to build relationships with these tools,
mhm,
when these tools, if you are suicidal and you ask ChatGPT, like, provide me with ways that I could, end myself, and it responds with valid ways and reasons, that's a problem, right? And,
mhm,
and so these types of emotional relationship types of correlations with these tools, that's a big problem as well.
mm. Yeah, did you see, Tucker interviewed, Sam Altman with OpenAI? He was asking just that question, like, "Will OpenAI, like, give me information on how to kill myself?" And
Yeah,
he didn't really have a super clear answer. He wasn't bad. His answer wasn't bad, but he was like, "Well, I guess it depends on the laws in the area." And it's like sort of situational dependent.
yeah,
Like, is
yeah.
it a 94-year-old woman with like stage 4 cancer?
and
Those
and
are
and,
tough,
and
tough questions.
but see, that's the response that any businessman who cares more about his own ego and financial gains are, instead of actually the consumer condition that you want to try to present. Like,
Hmm.
for Sam Altman, it's all about money right now. There is no other greater thing to. He wants to build an empire, and that's what he's trying to do. Even in his latest announcement, saying that, for a premium, he's going to start allowing adult content to be generated on the platform. Right.
Yeah.
So that's all financial incentive, nothing else. That does not serve humanity in any type of positive way.
So on the adult content thing, right? Like, I guess my argument would be if he doesn't do it, wouldn't some other AI
There's plenty of
software?
AIs out there that do it.
Yeah, right. Like,
Yeah.
so someone else would do it. So someone will just go to a different platform. I don't
There
know.
are yeah, there are tools out there that allow you to already do it. So if that's what you want to do, then go do it. But look, you can look at different platforms. For example, like Facebook. Facebook has does not allow adult material on the platform,
Mhm.
right? Because there's other platforms where you could go get it.
Yep.
But a platform like, we could argue like Instagram, which is also owned by Meta, is open to some levels of adult content. And then you go to like X, and X does have adult content,
Mhm.
right? So, for each platform, it's going to be their own decision on what to make and what to make available. But look, if that's what he wants to do in order to make money, this isn't an argument against free speech. Like, yeah, you can go and do it and people can pay you for it. That's
Mhm.
fine. But the question becomes is, how will that impact the overall platform and this addiction level that we are already having, the relationship that we are having with the tool? That's a area of critical concern. And I don't think, then shoving adult content into this is going to necessarily, uh, you know, relieve any of that, or help in any way, especially when there are already existing other platforms for people who want to partake in that type of content. It's already out there.
Mhm. So are you in favor of like US government getting involved in regulating this? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of any type of government-based regulations, but I do think that industry-wide, we need to come up with regulatory agreements. So, like,
Okay.
if you go back to even in science fiction, Osmo's law of robotics, right? Like an AI. If you've ever seen Will Smith's in the movie I Robot, it's
Mm,
based on that premise that there's laws that I cannot harm a human and and the such.
mm.
um, that's a rooted kind of theoretical framework that we could build and say, like, AI has to do this and it can't do that. But we have to, as an industry, as a society, come to those types of agreements without government intervention. The problem is in a capitalistic type of environment,
It's tough.
people are going to do what they want to do to make and maximize their own revenue.
Yeah, that's a challenge because I'm with you. I don't think the U.S. government is really proven their track record of regulation, right? Isn't it Bill Gurley that it's like the regulation almost always does the exact opposite of the thing that you're attempting for it to do, right? So you come in and you regulate like telecommunications, then it whittles down to like three telecommunications companies, and you have to pick Spectrum, who I think is evil. Um, yeah, I'm not in favor of the U.S. government coming in, but I am also with you in understanding if Sam Altman is as profit motivated as you seem to believe he is, like, why would he agree to, hey, no pornography, like with chatbots? You're like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I can get these poor guys and charge them $200 a
Yeah.
month, and they can watch Scarlett Johansson go crazy.
Yeah. The closest kind of regulatory system that I think could be implemented in this would be similar to how the music and film, television, gaming industries operate, which is a rating system. And so you could put, PGR, X, whatever type of rating on content. One, to acknowledge that this content was actually produced by artificial intelligence.
Good.
So there's some sort of watermark, notification that what was and what wasn't generated by a machine. And then having a rating system on it so that, even as you can ask it anything, but the response from those systems is going to be provided within a context of a warning statement, warning that this material is considered to be harmful and whatever else. Um, if we can figure out some mannerism by which we can grade the output, and the platforms themselves, then yeah, look, that doesn't restrict you from being able to do whatever you want to do. It just means that there is more regulation upon how you go about it. That's even in ChatGPT, if they open it up to adult content, they have to be able to regulate against age. They've going to have to be able to. You have to verify who you are and what your age is, and that you authorize that access, because we have government regulations about age appropriateness across the internet. So things like that could help support it, but yeah, it's still going to be a huge challenge.
Do you know if that rating system is that like state level? Is that federal level?
Federal level, yeah.
That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah. Well, in like in the so the MPAA, Motion Picture Academy Association, they regulate the ratings for movies, and so it's less government and more of an organization. But the organization was formed because of government recommendation that there was a regulatory type of environment, and every single movie that gets published has to go through that process to get a rating.
Hmm.
And then they actually have people who watch the movies and have a criteria, sort of a rubric that then comes across, and then they give it a rating based on that. And then sometimes directors or film studios can go back and say, well, if I remove a couple of more curse words, can I get it from a R rating to a PG-13 rating? So there's some of that goes on. But yeah, the primary premise was, there's a regulatory body that helps with that management. Same thing in video games. There's a regulatory body that was put into position because of complaints from the government about, criteria and content.
Mm,
But the other problem with all of this is that you've got to be able to uphold it. And you've got kids walking into R-rated movies at movie theaters all the time because the movie theaters isn't going to regulate it. You got parents buying kids mature rated video games because they don't know any better and or don't really care.
mhm,
So you've got a parental um, responsibility that's in that mix as well.
mm. Interesting. Chris, is there anything you feel like we didn't cover about AI that you think a lot of people are missing right now or not understanding?
Oh, there's a lot of things that people don't understand. Like the concept of AI agents, the buzzword agentic AI. There's autonomy in artificial intelligence, which doesn't exist. Like there's lots of areas of AI that people are confused about, or they believe the hype that something they've read. Marketing, all of that is creating a very unstable industry. We could probably spend an entire another hour on talking about the hype of artificial intelligence and the misinterpretation of capabilities and the overly hyped marketing, taxonomy.
Yeah, I just watched a short of Jeff Bezos saying like this is kind of how bubbles form. Like I don't know when he said that. It could have been years ago, but he's like a lot of people are coming in and investing and he's like, it's a bubble when every project gets funded and then people
Yeah.
can't tell what's a good project and what's not a good project.
Yeah.
So do you think that we're going to see a big pullback at some point from like
Oh
some of
yeah.
these?
Yeah. So, I mean, I predicted about a year ago, I said, somewhere in September of 2025, we're probably going to see a big bubble pop for AI. Well, we've passed September of 2025, so I wasn't really correct on that. But I definitely think that in early first quarter of 2026, January, February time, we're going to see a
Mm,
lot of problems because there are thousands of AI startups that have been funded that are not going to receive funding, and they're
mm,
all going to go by. And we are starting to see other areas like Meta just laid off a whole bunch of AI employees. Today, I was seeing that Amazon actually laid off a bunch of their gaming studio employees. Um, and so as more of these kind of layoffs that are impacted by AI happen, the funding is going to dry up, and those companies are going to go under. And the pullback as people start to realize what AI can and cannot do, when that starts to kind of plateau, same thing. You're going to have companies that are not investing in AI as much as they have been this year. So yeah, I would say that we are primed for an unfortunate series of events that is probably not going to be good for us.
you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Buy your NVIDIA puts for January
Yeah.
2026. This is not financial advice. Chris, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We'll let you get loose and go enjoy that beautiful Southern California sunshine. Where can people find you? Some of the stuff that you do. You've got books. You've got tons of content out there. Where can people catch up with that?
Yeah, best place is my website. You can find me at chrishood.com, CHRISHOOD.com. And there is my blog, my podcast, links to all of my books, all of my content, and all of my social media. So you can find me, follow me, reach out, ask questions. Happy to connect.
And your podcast is?
The Chris Hood Show. So you can go and find that as well right there, chrishood.com.
Can't miss it. Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate you.
Absolutely.